Well, hello, everyone. Hello, everyone from everywhere in the world. We have people around the world. I am Christian Oesch. I'm the president from the Swiss Association WIR. I'm right here in Switzerland, and I am most excited. I'm also very honored to have this fantastic group of people here that make up this panel, the international panel for our first international geoengineering and weather manipulation live webinar. I am really proud being able to announce that we have webinar participants from live webinar participants from 37 countries. But then in addition, we have now 6 live streams that are allowing up to 154 nations. In other words, people from over 150 nations around the world follow us live. That's exciting. Pretty much people from every single time zone around the world. As I shared with you, we have this webinar coordinated. We had this idea together, right, Renette? You're going to come to this. We're thinking about how we get more traction around the world about the issues on hand. So this webinar is designed to educate, inform, and also inspire action in regards to geoengineering environmental concerns. I think each and every one of us has various experiences and also skill sets that we have, and hopefully we can inspire each and every one of you with tonight's information that's being shared. This panel discussion focuses on scientific evidence, expert insights, but also potential solutions. That's very important because we have people that will follow us, and later on we have people that will watch this that are greatly concerned about what's happening in our space. The Q&As, we will have questions we will answer to. There's more questions than we have time for, but I think for anyone that is going to follow us going through this live webinar, that will have probably most questions answered as we go through this. Each and every one of us will do our best to allow for those questions to be answered. This theme of geoengineering, weather manipulation is extremely, extremely complex. So we won't have time to address every single thing, but I think with the next steps that we will take, it will definitely continue further research, especially with our joint collaboration around the world. And this grassroots movement is not just starting here, it's going other places. We 6 individuals are not in a position to solve this issue. I think all of us are required to give our best. And we will definitely do what I can do here from our platform here in Switzerland is to address the situation with more webinars, additional panels. And with that, I don't want to lose more time and I allow for each of those panel members to introduce themselves and give us a short background. Renette, may I please you?
Thank you so much, Christian. I appreciate it. And your sound was going out just a little bit, by the way. So hello, everyone. My name is Renette Senum, and it's really lovely to be here with our esteemed guests today. And of course, as Christian said, we will have other panels with other perspectives as well. So hold on for that later date. I have been very involved in community building for about 25 years. I'm a 2-time council member and a 2-time mayor in a small Northern California town. I have been engaged and calling out geoengineering for nearly 20 years. And I have been very much focused on rebuilding community, rebuilding and expanding legacy ranching and organic farming and so on, and ensuring that we have clean watersheds and so on. But the truth of the matter is, as I've been watching the weaponization of our skies over the years and the decades, I realize that it does not matter if I'm out there working hard to save the salmon or save the redwoods or save the children if we're all being sprayed like bugs. And so I have spent my whole entire life always trying to make the world better than we found it. And I have always been very dedicated in going down and lobbying down in Sacramento, California, creating telecom legislation as well as ordinances here in my own town. But once again, if we do not reclaim our skies, then as I've been working towards the 7 generation principle, which is every decision we make today should serve 7 generations from now, 7 generations will not have the planet that we have today. So I really thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone, for making this opportunity for us to come together and address this most serious issue. Thank you.
Renette, appreciate it. Dr. Anna, you're next.
My name is Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcha. I'm a trained internal medicine physician with a PhD in pathology. I run an integrative medical clinic, and I started researching the COVID-19 biological weapons of mass destruction and found that there's a chemical overlap to the polymers as well as the toxic metals that are being sprayed in the skies. I've been doing collaborative research with Clifford Carnicom, and the concern is really that, exactly as Renette said, that there's been a tremendous loss of species, that if our biosphere is being bioengineered and transformed in this technocratic transhumanist agenda, none of us can survive. So to me, this is an extinction level event. It has that kind of an acuity, and I do what I can to expose what is happening with the findings in the live blood as well as other research, and I'm honored to collaborate with these esteemed scientists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you to have you in the panel, Anna. Marvin Herndon, please.
Most of my scientific life has been disclosing Mother Nature's secrets. In 2015, I began disclosing deep state secrets. I published the first scientific article disclosing toxic coal fly ash as the main component of chemtrails. Since then, with a very few very capable colleagues, I have disclosed the extent of human and environmental health consequences of coal fly ash chemtrails.
Thank you so much, Marvin. Great to have you tonight out of California. Hans-Jörg, please.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Hans-Jörg Greta. I'm a chemical engineer. I'm already retired, I suppose, as Marvin as well. I'm still working in a small company, and I was in my professional life with the biggest chemical company worldwide, responsible for the analytics in Switzerland. I kept anyway very strong connection to my hobby. It was infrared spectroscopy. And how came I across with red? With the threads, very simple, once a day. I phoned to Christian, and the next day he sent me already the threads for analysts. So I was very simply involved, and as you may later on see, heavily involved, and that stays, I think, for the future as well.
Thank you so much, Hans-Jörg. You have been an absolute champ. You actually have allowed this to be made possible, as you know. So my heart goes out to you and your work, and especially your team. So fantastic to have you back.
Thank you that you say that, and I would also join the team. I have my former co-workers and other connections because of my former position in the management. I have good connections to analytics, people in the environment here.
Thank you, Hans-Jörg. Philip Seller.
Yes, hello everybody. I am great to be on board here. So my name is Philip Zeller. I got a PhD in physics. I graduated from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, ETH. I have never worked there because there are some rumors around that I do work there or have. That I never have worked there. I just graduated from there. I have done my PhD in the topic of optical sensors for biomedical tissue, and I have worked in the medical engineering field for many years before I became a lecturer in physics myself, but not at the ETH, so at a different high school or university. And apart from that, I have been a private pilot for about 35 years. So weather has always been a topic I always had to make sure, because I was only flying VFR, so visual flight. And I have really observed the changes in the weather. The first time I got suspicious was the summer of 2003 over here in Europe. That was definitely not natural. And now, since I have been researching more, I really would say that was the first time that it was done over here in Europe on a profound basis. But back then, I kind of fell back to sleep, and I only got aware of it to the full spectrum 8 years ago when I was hiking near an active volcano and saw the impact. And I remember one of my very first physics professors at the ETH having explained to us that romantic sunsets usually are a sign of air pollution and are not really something to be enjoyed.
Wow. That's great. Thank you so much, Philip. Also for you, you're a dear friend. We have some great experiences together. I'm really, really happy to have you on the team, and your research, specifically into the patents, allowed us to start connecting the dots. So tonight's webinar is about connecting the dots and showing the people that are interested to understand and learn more about it, and how we can actually follow that string. And so with this, I like to go into this kind of a background. Okay, why are we even coming together tonight here? And we discuss those mysterious fibers. It was back for some people that haven't seen the interview that we did with Renette a few months ago. We're going to do a little bit of a repeat, but just so for the folks that haven't gotten any information whatsoever. There was a time back in the fall of October 14th through the 16th in 2022, where we had these mysterious strings show up from northern Italy all the way across Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Netherlands, all the way up to the northern part of Germany. So a lot of people start asking us in our nonprofit platform what this is, and how it goes. People start talking, and even I went and walked into those strings with my wife when we did a little hike, and so it felt different. They were sticky, really sticky, and they behaved just different than normal spider strings. So that brought me to discuss this with Philip. And we discussed various things, what this could be and whatever. So I went to a lab near Bern and had this thing checked out. I wanted to find out what it is. And we got those lab reports back. And once we got that back, we discussed this under us. And we recognized that we probably didn't get the actual full disclosure on what it is. So that brought me back to Philip. And we discussed the situation, and we knew that he had some patent work that allowed to figure out for us that if these strings were whole, there was a hole inside, hollow inside, that we could actually verify technology, as you found, Philip, in those patents. So I then discussed this situation with Hans-Jörg here in Switzerland, and he then was such a great fellow, and he accumulated his team, and he says, we're going to look at this, we're going to find out, we're going to get to the bottom of this. This is, we did this starting in November 2022, and literally 22 months later, we came to the actual results. All the way along, we got more and more results, but then after 22 months, we made it public what we found. And I can assure you, with everyone that's following us tonight, we're not done yet. The research continues. Some additional results are coming out, but we have plenty for you to find out what we have identified in those analyses. Hans-Jörg will give us the details of that today, and then you as well, Philip. So thanks again for your awesome work. There's various reasons why this lab work took 22 months. We're a nonprofit organization, and we can only do these things, obviously, with memberships and donations. So we do depend on getting support from everyone else out there, because our problem is that the government is not doing its job. Okay, it would be the government's job to protect us from stuff that we will talk about. So this lays on us people, nonprofit organizations, and also alternative media platforms. We're supported tonight through Hoch 2 TV here in Switzerland. Plus, we have other great folks, alternative platforms around the world. On our website, we can go and find out all about it. We will make this all public. But it's important for everyone that follows this webinar to know that we depend on everyone out there because the government, the media, the politics and the governments, they just don't support us. And so we know we're onto something when they don't want to support us with our work. So I came to talk about this, well, it was 2.5, 3 years ago, Renette? I'm coming back to you. We spoke about this. We had a dialogue about 5G and the infrastructure build out, about the fifth generation mobile technology. And then I talked to just on the sidelines that we got some crazy stuff going on with those strings. We have no idea where it's going. But Renette, you and I got into a dialogue. We had an interview. And you always kept, what's up with those strings? Do you have your results yet? And I had to put you off for 22 months. Yeah. Now, I'm asking you, Renette, was it worth it, the wait?
I knew it was. I knew that you were fastidious with your research. I knew that you had pulled together a superior team. We were experiencing the same thing here in Northern California, in Hawaii, throughout the United States. These strings are coming down. I had women, friends, mama warriors, concerned citizens around the states collecting the same webs. And we knew that these webs were the same webs that you were experiencing in Europe. So I wanted to know, and I knew it was not going to be easy, the research that you have done. But I knew that what you were experiencing was exactly what we're experiencing here. And it is an international threat. So it was worth the wait. Yes.
Yes, and actually our collaboration brought us to this point that we're actually connecting the continents, the people around the world, because we can do a lot of heavy lifting. I think we've shown and proven that. But for the next step, and that's what we're going to talk about, Renette, what the next step is. And obviously, everyone that's going to follow through this recording here or the live version tonight are going to get an idea of what it is that we have found out. Now, we did file a criminal charge. In other words, I personally filed a claim through the public prosecutor here at the federal level because I tried to have dialogue with the Swiss government and with the federal council member that's in charge over the EPA, also the environmental part. They didn't allow us to actually get together to talk about our findings in the analysis, in the lab analysis. You and I have further now dialogued, and you want to tell us about the open letter you just did? Could you share maybe a little bit?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have here is a 501c3 called Gen 7, and that's regard to the seventh generation principle. And under that umbrella is Save Our Skies that we started 2 years ago. I put together this organization, this group, to advocate towards really having our agencies and our government do their job. I have been on a very big learning curve in the last 2 years. I've learned a lot between the myths and the facts of geoengineering, what it is, what it isn't, from intentional to unintentional geoengineering. Ultimately, we have also done rainwater samples, we've done public records requests, and what we've really seen is that our government is completely derelict in duty. They are not doing what they should be doing. There is not even a fox watching the hen house. So what we did was based upon your research. It is so critical what you've done. I really feel, Christian, that this is a watershed moment. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's one thing to sit there and point to the skies and say, oh, look at those streaks in the sky. This is what's happening. We're being poisoned. But what you have is concrete. It has standing in court. This can go to the highest courts in the country, in the world. And I equate this to many decades ago when we were having the smoking ban battle here in America over smoking on airplanes. The reason why ultimately smoking was banned in airplanes and ultimately and consequentially around the world in other restaurants and bars and so on was because we could smell it, we could see it, we could feel it in our hair. It was tangible. Geoengineering is a little bit less tangible, but what you've done now is you've taken these webs that people are collecting around the world, you've studied them, it is now tangible, and this is the epitome of the weaponization of our skies. So if we can take this to the highest courts, we can take this back to our agencies and say, hey, look, this is how weaponized our skies have become, that we now have dangerous toxic webs falling out of them. And you're not even noticing, you're not even testing, you're not paying attention. So what we did is we took the information you had, and I wrote and composed an open letter to Donald Trump, new US president, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and other federal officials. And what I've done essentially is basically said, we have a national security threat going on right now. We have toxic airborne threats and weaponization of the US airspace. And we need immediate need for action against the threat of toxic airborne threats and airspace weaponization. And we go into all the specifics, including all of your research as well, the nature of the threat. These are not naturally occurring. They contain hazardous chemicals and metals. They're carcinogenic. They have benzene derivatives and ketones and other histamines and so on, and that they present an imminent danger to public health and are potentially linked to military or experimental activities. Then I go into the different violation of U.S. laws and federal obligations, the Clean Air Act, the Chemical, Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act, prohibition against chemical weapons, the Posse Comitatus Act that we have here in the United States, which restricts unauthorized military activity within U.S. borders and demand federal intervention against domestic threats. And also it violates international law obligations, including the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, which is known as NMOD. And so then essentially we go into the fact that there's two other things that need to be enforced, and that is that, believe it or not, here in America, weather modification activities are actually allowed, and believe it or not, that U.S. human subjects are actually allowed to be tested upon from the airways. I could go out there and literally spray mRNA vaccines for research, do not have to let you know, do not have to get your consent or knowledge, and it's perfectly legal in America. That needs to be changed. So this essentially is a failure to act. It's a breach of duty. And we're calling upon the EPA, which has now been disbanded by Trump. So we're going after the Department of Justice and their environmental department. We're going after the Cal EPA, which is the California Environmental Protection Agency, and also the Department of Defense, as well as the FAA. And we have now also petitioned for a ruling, which we are sending to them. It's the first steps to ultimately take them to court if they do not do their duty. They have completely failed, and not only failed, but they failed for about 60 years now. That's how long it's been, 60 years.
That's just amazing. Well, I don't think we need more motivation, right?
No, we've got it all.
We got it all. Well, thank you so much, Renette. It's absolutely my pleasure to be working with you. You have been absolute darling in regards to making yourself available, as we had various communications under us to be able to actually organize all this. You have activated your network. We're networking now together. And since we can't get anyone to listen to us here in the Swiss government, okay? So our strategy here, Philip and Hans-Jörg included, is to go and start the wave in the United States with all you guys together. So since Donald Trump and his administration is making lots of waves worldwide, good, bad, I really don't care, right? But for us, it's important right now. Everyone is listening what's going on in the United States and how it's affecting everyone around the world. So we may, okay, have a chance there, and we're going to use our network. You have access to certain people in the administration. I do too. And somebody here in the group, doesn't care who it is, maybe someone has an ear for what we have. And we need to get that going as fast as we can. And you have launched legal actions. We have launched legal actions here. And maybe take this a little bit ahead here. But our strategy here in Switzerland is that anybody who is going to come across the strings, of course, right now we have winter. It's a little bit harder to find the strings because they blend in really well with the snow. But I would imagine in spring, summer, fall, we're going to see more of those strings. So I personally encourage, and we have built a platform around that anybody that comes across those mysterious strings, spider web, mysterious strings, they can actually accumulate those samples, and they can actually go ahead and use our template of the criminal complaint and go to the next police station or the public prosecutor and actually file a criminal complaint as well. I think as more people, if hundreds, if not thousands of people followed, and that will bring more awareness even for the people that are working in some kind of an administrative body. What do you think, Renette?
I think this is very critical and important. And this is the other thing, folks, is I have to say, as a former elected official, when you go to your elected officials and you say we have a problem, more than likely, if you don't also bring to them a solution on how to counter the problem, how to find the solution, they're not going to do anything. And what's happening at the federal level right now, the national level, is fantastic. But I can tell you right now, they're going to be looking to the experts at the grassroots level because they've been living it, breathing it, and researching it. So what we're trying to do is notify our elected officials and the appointed officials that we have a national emergency, and these are the issues, these are the violations of the law, but this is what we can do. So what we're doing here is creating a foundation of research, building blocks, and saying, okay, these are the issues, these are the problems at hand, and this is how you can counter them. If we do not present that, they're not going to move on it. And I'm telling you, you said earlier, Christian, this is a highly complex issue, much more complex than I ever realized. And most of those at the national level, state level, don't fully understand it. I'm still on my learning curve.
Yeah.
And so we can bring the leading experts in the world to that table and actually educate our elected officials at a level where they're actually being effective and impactful.
Yeah. So in other words, summed up together here is you put the government on notice in the United States. We're doing or have done the same thing here in Switzerland. Once you put them on notice, okay, they have an opportunity to cure. Mm-hmm. And if they don't do anything about it, then they have a problem. We're not teaching a law class here. There's other people that are following us tonight that are really excited about the legal part of this. For the government that's not listening and not doing anything, they may end up with a personal liability. But anyway, I don't want to get any longer here. We have some things prepared. We have a shorter version of the actual lab results, the analysis that we're going to now show you guys. Will probably be 25, 30 minutes. Hans-Jörg Grether, he will actually go ahead and share this with us. So I'm going to put this up on screen. Hans-Jörg, can you see all this?
Yeah. Okay.
So, all yours.
Yeah, thank you. Start. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my part still.
Yeah, that's your part. You can.
That's great. Well, for anyone here on the webinar tonight that hasn't seen those strings, here's something. A few images. You can see it's a really sticky thing here on the hand as well. So we have a lot more. Here are actually the samples that came in from all over of Europe that I have then accumulated and obviously made notes of and then sent it to the lab team. So Hans-Jörg received all sorts of labs of samples. You can see most of them, I asked them to put it in glass jars so we don't cross-contaminate them with plastic and stuff. So we had the most interesting packages that were shipped to us. So here's a video that I'm going to actually play with you. This is sent to us from Germany, our dear friend from Germany, Mark. I know you can't hear the sound, but you can see those strings. This is nothing like from a spider. But we have one more here. He's going to take it in his hand. You can see in his hand, the behavior in his hand is very strange. So they're just kind of blowing the wind here. and now he's touching it with his hand. Very famous hand, Mark, I know. Yeah, it's funny. So now, just about there. So anyway, this is just what the human eye can see. And now we're going to hear from Hans-Jörg. He's going to tell us what he's seen under the microscope and all these tools.
Okay. So that's, as you already said, a condensed version of the complete analytics. I let all the, let's say, machines, instruments aside. I do not tell how they work. I simply focus on the results, and I bring you the appropriate spectra and things which are play a major role in the findings we had. And this is the first one. We clearly have seen that the material, the polymer which flays around the webs, the mysterious threads, are not made from a commercial available, from a technical polyamide. It's made from polyamides from amino acids, probably including with their derivatives, and never from a plastic like PET or PE or PP. Then we made the elemental analysis, and clearly we found that what is expected for polyamides is carbon, hydrogen, naturally nitrogen. And we found also some sulfur, which came internally to the conclusion that there must probably an amino acid based on cysteine formulated. We also detected metals. Most of them were in the upper range, but we have a little evaluated value on aluminum. Then we could demonstrate by scanning electron microscopy that the fibers had an outer diameter of approximately 4 to 6 micrometers, corresponds to 4,000 to 6,000 nanometers, and they are all hollow inside. Diameter approximately 1 or 2 to 3 micrometers. And together with optical microscope, we saw that they are inside whole, have cavities, which are probably filled with material. And that came me to the next step, because if there's something inside, we thought we can extract it. And I did extraction with pure solvents, organic solvents, 99.99 purity. And what came out was later on analyzed with FTIR, GCMS, and we got a very broad range of chemicals which are saturated, unsaturated, cyclic, monomeric, aromatic hydrocarbons, including benzene derivatives, ketones, and so on. And starting research about the toxicity of these substances, and we found the GHS hazard labeling. That means Global Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, which is a worldwide standard for every chemical which is registered. And then we got answers like highly flammable, caused hazardous, corrosive, highly toxic, and so on. Next slide, please. This is an overview, short overview of the GHS labeling. You see always the red rhombus, which is filled with a sign about the toxicity or about the warning or danger. And you see it range from highly toxic, means the skull. Is there corrosive, can attack your hands, can attack your skin, can attack every surface. It's harmful to health, even maybe can cause cancer. It's hazardous to water. It attacks maybe aquatic organisms like fish or insects, and it's highly flammable. And what is astonishing at the research level, when we got all these pictograms, was that some of the substances are even not registered. That means maybe they are really new research products, never registered, never put in a patent, or they are made from a company and they don't want to tell the other people what they have done. Next slide, please. This is one of the first thread 347 I got from Christian. That's the FTIR. And you may see a curve with we call that absorption bands, curves with numbers on top. That's the labeling of the wave number. And regarding, as a spectroscopist, these figures, you can clearly say, well, that must be a polyamino amide or an amide, because the two major bands you see in the middle, around 6000 and 5000, are typical for such substances. And they're the only and indicative proof that this substance is there and is not really anything else. Next slide, please. And then, because Christian declared already, the first analysis was given to a lab, and the finding was it's polyamide. It's a natural polyamide type nylon. And then I didn't believe that, because if I look at the figures and you see now all the forms is different in the so-called alkyl vibration region. It's bigger, it's stronger. And if you compare it, next slide, please, in the so-called fingerprint region, you see the details. Historically, the names for these bands were given amide 1, 2, 3, up and 4, and so on. And compare now, please, the two figures, not the two figures, the curves. The one is the red one from our thread, and the other ones were the commercial available polyamides called polyamide 6, nylon 6, polyamide 12, polyamide 6, 12, 11, and so on. The numbers is indication which monomers has been used to make a polymerization with these monomers. 6 means we have 2 monomers with 6 carbon atoms condensed together to build a nylon or a polyamide. Next slide, please. Then we make naturally data bank research in a huge IR data bank, and we got a lot of hits. The best ones are always some which are very close to, let's say, an amino acid polymer based on natural amino acids. One is the spun silk, and the silk material of the cocoon, maybe you know it, consists mainly of fibrine, and fibrine is made with 3 amino acids. That declares we saw these because these two curves are very identical. If you look at especially at the numbers around 1600, you have as well in both little peaks inside, which is typical for formation of several nuclei of several amino acids, which are condensed together to build a polymer. Next one. Another proof to get out what it is was to use pyrolysis gas chromatography coupled to mass spectrometry. The trick behind this was in a very short time, that means milliseconds, the product, the sample, in that case, the thread is pyrolyzed, is thermally destroyed, and then separated about the column. And here it builds, you may see many peaks, many single lines, regular distance with no further information. And then we did the same with the thread. Next slide, please. And you see now the difference. Remember the first pattern, many peaks, one besides the next, and this one gives only one single peak. The nylon 6 is made from caprolactam, and by pyrolysis GCMS investigations, the monomer is cracked down or the polymer is cracked down to the monomer and can be identified as caprolactam. And all the technical and commercially available polyamides have 1 or 2 or 3 monomers, and by using pyrolysis, you always get these monomers back. Sometimes it's the original version, sometimes it's, for example, a nitrile instead from amine. So we have a clear proof, two things, FTIR, GCMS, pyrolysis GCMS, which clearly say it's not nylon, it's amino acid. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of all the different threads we got from locations where people collected it. You see the name, Dietlikon, Hinwil, Riedwil, Krappenwinning, all small towns in Switzerland. And if you look at the curves, and the red one is always the first sample we got 347. They all look similar. They have all these peaks on the top of the amide 1 or amide 2 band. So we are sure this material spread from the sky is always the same. Next slide, please. We came to the elemental analysis. Left-hand side, you see the organic elements, and it's clearly to expect that the nitrogen amount is relatively high, and the sulfur amount is 0.2, which speaks, as I already said, maybe amino acid cysteine has been used. In the next rectangle, you see all the elements we have checked, and aluminum is slightly higher. We have also some iron, but iron is not toxic, and we have, interesting wise, magnesium, all with 300 ppm. And in the rectangle right down, blue, we have checked all the other elements of the periodic system, and you may see they are all below 5 ppm. Next slide. This is the first picture we made with my optical microscopy. We used embedding material paraffin wax, and then with a rotary microtome instrument, we cut slices for slices till we reached positions where we clearly can see the fibers. And you may see already in the picture 11A that they are hollow inside, but in the picture 11B, you can clearly see that is, besides it's hollow, we have a coloration. And the coloration brought us to the idea they must be filled. There must be something inside. Next slide, please. This is a picture taken with the scanning electron microscope. Left-hand side, you see these fibers were relatively single, sometimes a little bit bundled together, but mostly single. On the right side, there's a strange thing. I'm assuming the so-called spinning process, that is the electrospinning process, is not completely perfect, or even they had some problems by spraying it out because all the fibers were sticked together. You see a flat, a complete area where all the fibers are stick together. Some are going out, some are staying inside. Next slide, please. Then we made the preparation. The picture you see are both from the observation room of a scanning electron microscope. And for this experiment, and this was really the final clue, we first used a completely different embedding material. We formed prism, which were with rotary instruments slice by slice cut down. And we got very good surfaces, perfectly cutted, because this time we used a diamond cutter. The first experiment, normally with a cutter on a rotary microtome tool, is made from steel, but steel is not sharp enough. So always the fibers were very sensitive, broke and not glad to cut. So we used this time a diamond cutter and got excellent cuts. The red points, 2 points on the left side, is the pen marker, because we have to look where are the fibers embedded and how did we cut it. On the right side, you see the same picture, but this time we used a black marker to identify the location, the position where the fibers were cutted. Next slide. And these are the, let's say, the final confirmation that the fibers are hollow inside. The white spots are from the marker, but there are enough, let's say, fibers remaining, and everybody can see they are open inside. Even some are like the cursor is at the moment, some are looking like material comes out to the cutting. It looks like a tongue coming out, and that was another proof that the material is inside. Maybe not all fibers are filled, that is possible. I don't know how the process really runs, the spinning process and filling process, but you see most of them are absolutely hollow, have cavities, and many of them are filled. And go to right picture, right side, there is in the middle one fiber lengthwise cut it, and you see that it's hollow inside. And here are, yeah, this one, here are some Some diameters we see again, the inner diameter is roughly 3 micrometers and the outer diameter is around 4 to 5 micrometers. Next picture, please. And then we had, lucky-wise, found one place where the cut horizontally was perfect. And then the 6,000 magnification clearly showed that inside this fiber is material. It's clearly cutted, it is filled, and that is clear that we said, now we have to do extraction. But now come the pattern situation. It's up to you, Phil, to explain what is the background. Next slide. Yeah.
Okay, maybe first of all, of course, this topic that we discussed tonight is a very, very narrow topic when it comes to all of these activities that are being done on us. And it might not even be related directly to geoengineering, but rather terraforming or destruction of whatever they are planning to destruct if they do. So we said we limit this presentation to 2 patents that we have seen in the context of this whole analysis. Sorry, I have a visitor again. And this one is really this is a European patent, but in the same patent family there are two American ones as well. You can see them on the white line below the yellow part. It's a US 8017061 and US 8431064. And these patents really claim this. The wording that we have chosen here is out of the claim. So it's a method for the application of nanoscaled polymer or polylactide fibers and tubes or hollow fibers as carriers for agriculturally applicable active agents, wherein the application occurs using the method of electrospinning, wherein the arable land and or plants or seeds existing thereon are used as a counter-electrode. And they describe in detail that really certain different pesticides, insecticides, and so on can be used in this electrospinning process, and that several layers even, not just one outer layer and the payload, but even several layers can be performed while spraying, and that even if it's being sprayed from airplanes, it can be directed very specifically to specific plants or animals, or even parts of them, like the limbs of an animal or a human being. So that's explicitly stated or quoted in this patent. Maybe next slide, because there it's written. It's still the same patent, Christian.
Yeah, you're there.
Oh yeah, thanks. Sorry. So the examples are methods of application distributing with watering cans, hand syringes, backpack sprayer, tractors, helicopters, and aircraft, or of course drones, which are a specific kind of aircraft as well. So we really thought that this describes it very well, even though this patent is very old. It was granted in 2013. Application was 2004. And we are sure that in the meantime, the technology is much, much further than that. Probably the people who have invented this specific technique, they had more or less slower and lower flying planes like drones or propeller-driven planes in mind. But we are sure, and we have seen evidence that this has been further developed. What is interesting in this context to mention is that patents are often used as so-called proofs. I don't fully agree, because you always have to see if a patent has been granted and if after the grant it has been upheld by paying the fees for the patent, because then there was an interest for commercially using the invention. If it's just an application, it's definitely not a proof that something really has been done. Nevertheless, I would like to mention very briefly a newer application that I have found like 2 weeks ago by a Swiss company doing geoengineering. The company is called WeatherTech, so the name says it all. And they have applied for a patent in 2020, which has in the meantime been published. And there they write in the description, so not in the claims, but in the description, describing the state of the art. They write spraying electrically charged droplets of pesticide solutions from airplanes recently became increasingly used in agriculture because of better application of these droplets and their charged evaporation residues to plants due to attractive electric forces. So what we really can see is that the combination of whatever agents are being released into nature with electromagnetic or electric forces is increasingly applied. So I just wanted to mention this. I'm digging deeper into all the references quoted in this document. So maybe in a later conference, I may tell you more about that one. Maybe next slide. This was the second patent that I initially mentioned, and this one really made me flabbergasted when I saw the official patent figures, which contained actually several photographs, which is rather rare in patents, that you have photographs and you can see these photographs look almost identical to what Hans-Jörg found after he finally was able to embed the samples and cut them with a diamond knife. It was really interesting. And the patent is really from the same field. Figure 1, the one on the left side from the figures, is a schematic representation of such an electrospinning apparatus as it can use in airplanes. And the right side is as said, scanning electron micrographs of these hollow fibers. So, and that's even an older patent, which was applied for in 1999.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Philip. Excellent. We're going to come back and use Hans-Jörg for the next part here, because now we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an example. I made the extraction from 3 of these threads. It's mentioned on top, and I compared it versus the thread 347. And you may see that the thread gives a completely different IR spectrum compared to the extraction. Next slide, please. This is an expansion of the region which is called fingerprint of the FTIR. And what you can see, we have the additional bands coming up can be assigned to ester or ketones. That's the green and the blue and the violet magenta line, exactly. Then we have the blue line where we can say, okay, there must be aromatic and carbon acids inside, maybe even a monomeric amino acid. And we have also clearly seen there must be ether inside the extraction. So compared again, once again, to the thread, completely different picture of extract versus thread. Next slide, please. And this is now the GC-Amet trace of a thread. We used extract number 4 to make a clear picture about what is formulated and what are the substances. And you may see left hand with the green and black lines. This is a part of the GC-MS. And on the right hand side, these are all the substances they found by using MS and data bank research and compare the mass spectrum with reference spectrum. These are roughly 50 substances, and we concentrated first on 30, and I will show you next slides a few typical examples of the substances we found. This is an ester. It confirms the FTIR findings, and it's called epoxy propyl acrylate. And if you look at the red prism on top, you see already the pictogram, which is really dangerous. It's a skull. And if you read a little bit what is written down as danger, means toxic if swallowed, toxic in contact with skin, cause severe skin burns and eye damage, may cause an allergy, skin reaction, toxic if inhaled. Also that looks like it's very dangerous substance. And if you compare now the gray rectangles, on top we have the sample, and on bottom we have the reference spectrum. And if you look at the lines, you see that is very congruent. You can say, okay, so the main peak, the main mass destruction is there. And if regarding the hit of the database, it could be clearly said that must be a substance like that. Next one, please. This is another, it's an ether. You see, in this case, you see the molecular mass is identical in the spectrum of the reference and in the spectrum of the sample. And the astonishing thing in this case is this substance is known, but there is no GHS labeling known, because nobody has data evaluated. So we don't know how dangerous is this substance, which is spread around. Next one. Here we have a very typical ketone. Regarding Cas number, we found an SDS, which had a number of very toxic pictograms. You see corrosive, acute toxic, irritant, and flammable. And if you look at what is a precautionary statement or prevention, you see what you have to do if you come in contact with that. If on skin or hair, take immediately all contaminated clothing away, rinse skin with water shower, wash contaminant, get medical advice or get medical attention. So you can say that's a very toxic substance. Next slide, please. Here's one that's very interesting. Another one, it's an ester again. And we can see that that both reference and sample spectra are nearly identical. And if you try to find something out, you found in PubChem, NIH in USA is registered, but no SDS found. And if you go to the European chemical database, ECHA, we're always looking at the Cas number. Cas is the chemical abstract selected number, which is identical for every substance, every chemical substance worldwide and registered. And the European database had no results about that, had nothing inside. So it's a more or less unknown substance. Next slide. Here once again, an ether. Again, we have very toxic symbols, especially the skull. It's always the same, and the picture from sample and reference look very identical. Next one is the same picture. We have a good correlation between reference spectrum and sample spectrum, and pictograms have this time it's very fatal if swallowed and enters airways. This is a pictogram on the right-hand side. That means it can destroy in your body things we don't know what had happened. Next slide. Again, that is something which is very crazy. We found a histamine derivative. The histamine block is set nearly what is in the blue and in the black rectangle, and we don't know if this product is coming into your body or on your skin. What is the metabolism? What is the cracking or the destroying reaction on your skin? So histamine, the histamine block is already in this molecule. It's not a pure histamine, but we don't know what's happened if it comes in contact with your body or goes inside of your body. Next slide. Here I have with the first aromatic benzene derivative. The spectrum is clear. It's this one described as dimethylbenzene. And looking at the pictograms, the red rhombus, you see again danger, irritant, and very dangerous. Next slide. Another aromatic benzene derivative. Here we have again, let's say it's a full bunch, nearly full bunch of pictograms about toxicity. We have the spectrum which fits perfectly, and you see it's flammable, it's irritant, it has health hazard, and has environmental hazard. Come to water, warnings is everything. Next, please. This is again an aromatic benzene derivative, and here as well we have 3 pictograms. Minimum 1 is very dangerous. It attacks directly your body if you inhale it or if you get it on your skin. Now we come to a final conclusion. As we already know, the fibers are polymer based on polyamide. They are natural based, like amino acids. They are biodegradable. The average diameter is a few micrometers and has internal cavities with payloads. In this case, we found a lot of chemical substances for the extract number 4. As I said before, roughly 50 substances, different substances. And that was proven by extraction, where it was tested with GCMS and with FTIR. And many of them are toxic, corrosive, harmful to health, or hazardous to water. And that was Philip declared the patent, which is behind described applications which make the filling of the fibers with agricultural substances like pesticides, biocides, even medicine is mentioned there, and they used it to target plants, parts, or other biological systems in it's named hands, feet, or legs of humans or animals. That's the whole story at the moment.
Wow. Thank you so much, Hans-Jörg. So since we talk about the danger of those substances, and again, for someone that maybe didn't catch this, but this is about all the substances that were found inside those tubes. And these analyses have clearly established that those substances are part of the filled tubes. And when we first looked at this, we didn't think that when we recognized they could be whole, we didn't think that these guys actually filled them. We thought they maybe did some kind of a blind test just to see if the electrospinning works from whatever source this was sprayed from. But when we were able to actually extract, we were actually completely shocked that they were not a blind test. This was an absolute targeted application. So from that, I would like to get Dr. Anna now. You have access to the sheets that you want to share with us, because I like to go into for the people that are shocked, they're afraid, they're in panic now. Could you share with us a little bit of your findings of your research with your colleagues and your research team? Also, Marvin, you're invited to participate here. This is you guys' part. I know you both work extremely well together. You're trusted, alliances. Dr. Anna, please come out and tell us what you have found out.
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen here. So my concern as a researcher is about the findings of the human blood. I look at dark field microscopy of live blood samples. And since in the post-COVID era, there have been an enormous amount of polymer filaments that have been found. And I started correlating that with the research of Clifford Carnicom, for example, who for 30 years also found Morgellons from geoengineering. And what happened is I'm showing here a filament in unvaccinated blood, and you see exactly what you showed. There is a hollowness inside of it that looks like the fiber is actually a delivery device for something. And here on the other side, what you can see is a Morgellons filament that was isolated by Clifford Carnicom within decades ago. So what we did was many different research aspects as to what happened to humanity's blood. This is unvaccinated blood. We applied a low-level electrical current, and in 2 hours, these filaments were growing because they're actually self-assembling within the blood. What we then found, we did near-infrared spectroscopy on the isolated filaments from the human blood, and found very similar chemical signatures to what was presented. So what you can see is a lot of halogens. We did find vinyl alcohol, polyamides, polyenes, which is polyethylene, polyethylenes and polyethylene glycol, silicone, sulfur. And so the concern is what exactly is happening to the blood. This was a study that we did on near-infrared spectroscopy of COVID-19 vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. And again, we found the methyl groups, the polyenes, polyamides and amide polymers. So we were quite concerned about it. And then we wanted to see historically how does that correlate with these filaments. And so, for example, this was an environmental filament testing project, similar fibers like you had, but this happened in 2010. And this was the metals that were found, very similar context. Aluminum was the highest one, titanium, vanadium, zinc. And so Renette had sent me some of the spider filaments. I also looked at those under the microscope, and some of the fiber aspects certainly looked similar to what we see in the blood. I correlated this also with the microplastics literature, because the microplastics have been now found even in Antarctica, and the signatures, for example, are very similar to what is now being found in human tissues. So, for example, this recent study of the human brain, a plastic tablespoonful of microplastics in the human brain in autopsy found with polyamides, nylon, polypropylene, and the question is, where is this all coming from? The scientists are saying it's degradation products from plastics. However, if you look also at the geoengineering patents that also discuss polyethylene, for example, as weather modification polymers, there's also overlap there. Dr. Hildegard Staninger, with whom I very closely work, toxicologist and advanced nanotechnologist, she analyzed the Morgellons fibers as well as the polymers that were within people that were also self-assembling nanotechnology and microchips, and there was a lot of chemical overlap. She also found polyamides and polyethylene. I am a certified chelation practitioner. I pull out heavy metals out of people, and what I want to show here is Dr. Herndon. He wrote many research articles about the coal fly ash, and it was found that when it was put in distilled water, the 38 elements were actually within this, the particular toxic metals: aluminum, antimony, arsenic, barium, beryllium, cadmium, lead, mercury, nickel, thallium, and uranium. So if you see what I pull out of people, you can see exactly that: extremely high level of aluminum, antimony, arsenic, barium, beryllium, lead, uranium, and all of these metals are synergistically toxic. They cause accelerated aging, they're carcinogenic, they cause heart disease, arteriosclerosis, dementia, every aspect of endocrine disruption, and people are experiencing accelerated aging and turbo cancers, which is not just due to the deployment of the COVID-19 biological weapons, but also, in my mind, due to what we are inhaling on a daily basis, including all of the chemicals and unregistered chemicals that Hans-Jörg just discussed. We also did analysis of blood of wild animals. This is the blood of a squirrel, and you can see that there is the same polymer filaments that you can find in human blood are there. So that clearly indicates that there is something that's being sprayed that's affecting all of wildlife. This is a venison blood, and you can see the same polymer filaments from a deer, close to my backyard that somebody had taken care of. This is an example of what happens to humans when they consume this kind of contaminated animals. So these were grass-fed beef samples, 3 of them that I looked at, of an unvaccinated beef, and they had all of these different polymers in there. And the owner that had butchered them to use for the family for food was on a carnivore diet, and this is his blood. And in terms of the polymers and how they are actually destroying the blood and replacing it with polymers. I have done experiments of if you just draw 30 milliliters of blood now, even of unvaccinated people, and let it sit overnight, there is a polymer plastic rubbery-like material that develops. This is a rainwater analysis microscopy. You can see these purple filaments, and this is what I see in human blood. Nothing in the human blood should be purple or neon pink. And so my question as a doctor is the danger for humanity, the fact that we are all contaminated, that we're inhaling this stuff, that this is causing illness. It's a depopulation weapon, and that it needs to be addressed as an immediate public health threat and further evaluated. And I also want to say that there was a study in 2012, a French analysis of similar filaments. They found DHP, endocrine disruptors, endocrine challenges and disruption are seen now ubiquitous in so many people, and they found many others toxic synthetic compounds within it. So this has been going on for a long time, and people need to take it serious. And with this, I'll turn it over to Dr. Herndon.
You have to unmute yourself.
Ooh, there.
Okay, there we go. Excellent.
Well, there's even more of a problem than Anna is mentioning. The infection or infestation of the body from these aerosols, it's more than just the fibers. Coal fly ash, for example, is composed mostly of spheres. There's a researcher in England, a Dr. Barbara Maher, who studied the brains of people who have died of Alzheimer's. And what she found was that there were crystalline magnetite. Magnetite is Fe3O4. She found crystalline magnetite, which is produced in the body, but in the brains. But she also found spherical magnetite, which comes from outside, which is characteristic of the fly ash. So the what we're breathing, it comes every possible way into our body, through our eyes, through our skin, through our ingestion, and it's just about everything that's toxic, and we're in a real problem. Now, the question is, why are they doing this? This was over a period of about 10 years publishing scientific articles, mostly about chemtrails and the medical effects of them. Frequently, editors and reviewers would ask one question. What is the legality? How is it that this is occurring in Switzerland, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, and other places, and no one will say anything? What is the legal basis? And then one day I discovered, someone mentioned INMOD, which is an international treaty called the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques. Well, by the name, that's something anyone could sign on. And in fact, it was entered into force in 1998 and now has something like, I want to say more than 90 countries are signatories to that. Well, it's one of the few conventions or international treaties that is not quite described accurately. Most treaties, the title says exactly what the treaty is about. This is an exception. The convention does not prohibit the use of environmental modification techniques. It sounds like it. The first article says something to the effect that signatories will endeavor not to. That has no teeth. If they wanted to prohibit, they would say shall not. But then the rest of the treaty, the second article, is a definition of environmental modification that I don't think anybody on this panel could make any broader. It even includes outer space and biota, which we're biota. Then the third article begins the real source. It's in very confusing language, but it and uses the word shall, and its signatories shall participate to the most possible activity to participate in peaceful environmental modification. Now, what is peaceful modification? It's, well, you could fertilize a garden with it. There's no such thing. Any large-scale environmental activity is not peaceful. But that's what this treaty is forcing countries, signatories, to participate in. Now, because in Michigan there was a dropping of material from an aircraft, that I got access to the people, their records, the particles, the Michigan Environmental Services. And what all this appears to be is little droplets of plant material mixed with salt, mixed with coal fly ash and some kind of a binder. It's like cryoconite particles of debris that sits on a glacier and melts its way in. So it's very clear that the peaceful purpose is to melt Arctic ice. But that's a subterfuge. That's an excuse for countries to allow this to happen. But they're doing a lot more. Up until about a year and a half ago, I lived in San Diego, California for many years. And I watched the jet planes spraying chemtrails almost every day up and down the coast. And when rain was expected, water in California comes from the Pacific Ocean. And chemtrails desiccate the air and they heat the air and prevent the inflow of moisture from the Pacific. And when the news would announce that we're expecting rain in a few days, the planes would multiply. They'd be out there to force that water not to come in. So we had decades, more than a decade of desiccation. And if you've watched the news over the last few months, you've seen Los Angeles and San Diego and a whole bunch of California burning up. Well, Mark Whiteside, my physician colleague, and I published a paper in 2018 about California wildfires and the cause of it and the desiccation that's being forced upon it. This has nothing to do with melting Arctic ice, except it does contribute to global warming. But it's what it is really is environmental warfare on human populations. And this is the subterfuge is melt Arctic ice, but the reality is environmental warfare. And as far as preventing this, first of all, everything's done in secret. And nobody had beforehand really understood where it comes from because everybody gets benefits. The military, for example, gets benefits from it, and they can use it to engineer storms or cause drought on enemies or whatever. But it wasn't clear just who had the authority. But the authority comes from this international treaty. In the United States, the US State Department is responsible for US treaties. So that's the doorway, the entrance for just about every endeavor that it could be classified as environmental warfare. It begins in the US State Department. And that's where we really need to address our issues. And every other country that's a signatory power has the equivalent of a State Department that handles that. Now, you often hear the phrase in the US that federal laws supersede state laws. Well, in this instance, an international treaty supersedes federal laws if that treaty is allowed to progress via the State Department. So this is a fairly new approach, and I think that's where a lot of focus needs to be in terms of the individual countries, because this read the treaty, read it as if it's a contract. I mean, I was very sensitive to this because some of the consulting that I've done in the past, I've always written my own contracts. So I got the sense of contract law and the need to use words that are precise.
Yeah.
Like shall, for example, means you got to do it. Whereas endeavor not to doesn't mean anything. And the people have been tricked. I doubt if any of the signatories ever read this with thoroughness. And in fact, I've seen people who write legal opinions and analyses that this goes right over their head. I mean, this was a cleverly done document, but it's an evil document. But this is the legal basis.
Excellent, Marvin. I'm going to just expand here a little bit. The Swiss government, what we showed here, the slides which you showed about that in Article 3, the Swiss government signed on to this treaty from the UN, which they started this treaty in 1976, and the Swiss government signed on to it in 1988. So 12 years later, the Swiss government signed on to it. So I guess for anyone that's viewing this, let's make sure that every one of you can research this in your own country when your country signed on to this treaty. So this is the legal basis, and this is exactly what I personally included in my claim against the federal council member. Okay, so that is very, very specific right there, because we now have the evidence with the lab analysis that they are not doing it for peaceful purposes. And that's exactly why we are all so excited on this panel, because these 22 months in the lab allowed us to get us the absolute fundamental basis for this legal claim against these perpetrators, because now we can actually have the evidence showing that they're not doing it for legal purposes. Marvin, would you like to say anything else? But for sure, I'd like to give Renette the word again, because that, as your former politician and mayor, those are some serious things now. And the knowing who is responsible, if you say it's the State Department, we need to focus on the actual absolutely responsible party here.
Well, I just filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of State. Now, I don't intend to just leave it there, because what it really needs to do is to get to President Trump and Elon Musk and his team, because you could think of the State Department as a portal for all of the geoengineering that's taking place. It's all secret. Well, graphically, at one point I thought, well, it's like the head of an octopus with all the tentacles. And I thought, no, that's a terrible analogy, because octopi are very intelligent and they're nice creatures. A more appropriate representation would be the head of Medusa, with snakes going out through all the departments and so forth. And I suspect that if Elon Musk and his team, his Doge team, gets into the computers, they will discover massive amounts of fraud that's being used to pay for this and to enrich the people who are at the bottom of it. And I think that's hopefully what will be happening.
We've had dialogue before, Marvin, and I'm so glad you bring this out. I wasn't sure if you're going to bring this out, but I am so glad that all the listeners that are on here with us are getting this. This is so massive, significant. Renette, I like for you to say a few words here. I'm sure you're ready here, loaded, ready to go.
Well, as I said before, as a former elected official, when people come to us with problems, generally your elected and appointed officials, the agencies won't do anything unless you also present the solutions. And while we don't have the State Department included in this, we certainly can throw them into this open letter. So this is what I suggest people understand. These are the changes we're looking for right now to uphold the national security interests of the United States, of course, Europe as well, and protect the health of its citizens. We demand the following: a full-scale federal investigation into the source, composition, and purpose of these airborne filaments, immediate coordination between the Department of Defense, EPA, and the HHS to conduct independent testing and risk assessments, an immediate halt to any classified or experimental military activities involving atmospheric dispersal of chemical, biological, or nanotechnological materials over U.S. territory, congressional hearings to examine the evidence, investigate potential violations of federal law, and uphold responsible parties accountable. Public disclosure of all existing government data on atmospheric testing, geoengineering, and potential foreign or domestic threats related to these toxic materials. And full enforcement of the 15 U.S.C. Chapter 9A to ensure that no undisclosed weather modification activities are occurring in violation of U.S. law. And then lastly, immediate enforcement of 50 U.S.C. 1520A to not only investigate, but also terminate any and all illegal biological or chemical experimentation on American citizens, ensuring full accountability for any agency, contractor, or foreign entity involved. So essentially, in conclusion, we're saying it's a present reality, that this is not theoretical. You've proven that. Our skies have been weaponized. Again, this is not a conspiracy, and it is actually a moral obligation to protect the American people from covert and unauthorized threats, foreign or domestic. And so we are asking for immediate, decisive action. This is an open letter. It is available on your platform, Christian, as you know, for people to take. It's available on my Substack, Renette Senham's foghornexpress.substack.com, also saveourskies.org. You can take whatever pieces you want. You can take this letter, send it to your officials as well. We have the format for the whole entire world to use to their disposal.
Thank you so much, Renette. Fantastic. I think we all will put our heads together some more. We will, outline the action plan, almost like a checklist in how every single one that's viewing this, what action they can actually take. So with this, we're going to go into the next and involve some of these trusted people that follow our information. From these 500 seats, all the 500 seats in our live webinar, we had registrations from out of 37 countries. And these 500, 145 out of them submitted their questions. So we're not going to have 145 questions thrown in here. So bear with me. I picked a few because it's impossible for us. But I think most of those questions that we received were actually answered as we went through this webinar tonight. So I have a few, and I will kind of direct it. I'm going to go ahead. Donna from the United States writes, how can we protect ourselves from geoengineering particles? That's kind of open. There's so many different, it's complex. Maybe for you, Dr. Anna, what would you suggest? Can we protect it? Or like you maybe suggest, how can we detox and get rid of the stuff? What can you tell us, Anna?
What is very important is that people use antioxidant or electron donors. The most easy one is vitamin C, which is a metal chelator. These nanoparticles, exactly as was described earlier, they're so small they are like a gas. They can enter through the skin, through the eyes, and we're all constantly affected by them. I personally use EDTA, which is available over the counter with mineral supplementation in the morning. People can use that at night. You can find more in my two books, Transhuman 1 and 2. Volume 2 discusses how to survive the depopulation agenda, and it has extensive research regarding these protocols. So it's a bit complicated to discuss it all, but to get the metals out as well as to endeavor to give electricity back to the blood that is being hijacked by this stuff is quite important.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Anna. I think that you and I, and maybe also some others, will have specific webinars about exactly those health, protocols and stuff like that. Now, I have an additional question here that comes from Shani out of the UK. Are they aerosoling vaccines, engineered bacteria or yeast? I'm coming to you, Philip, because you have researched those patents, Philip. Is it possible to have vaccines or biological items filled into those tubes and otherwise? What can you tell us based on the research of your patent work?
Well, as I said earlier, a patent is not really a final proof. However, there are a lot of patents out there that claim exactly that. And since we know that they have rolled out the self-replicating vaccines, at least in Japan last autumn, it's definitely possible, because from a patent point of view, there are many such patents out there, applications as well as granted ones. And then furthermore, there was an official statement 2 or 3 years ago by the Australian government that they used this technique over Australia for COVID protection, as they named it. So yeah, there is a huge possibility of that.
Yes, and we also, most of those patents have commercial application and use. So when we talk about military operations or secret black ops operation, I don't think they will have to register a patent or do anything like that. That's all in secret, right?
Well, that's an interesting point. First of all, I sometimes wonder why there are so many patents out there which have been granted to the military, the Navy, whomever, from the state, because the state itself does not need a patent. The state can always, because the patent doesn't allow you to do something, it allows you to forbid third parties to do the same thing. So the state can always do that. So why does the state need a patent? But then there are laws, at least in the United States. I have looked into them. I don't have them present in detail, but there is a huge list of technologies that cannot be patented, or otherwise, if you patent an invention that falls within this list, you will be contacted and you have to retract the patent, and you must never publish anything about it. So that is regulated by law, at least in the United States. So I am totally sure that the most important technical inventions, I wanted to say advancements, but that's wrong in my opinion, because I don't see it as an advancement, but inventions are totally held from the public, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Philip. I have a next following question. Very, very interesting. It's Christy from the Netherlands that sent this over to us. Question goes, can you find lab people in each country we can bring our webs to? We have these a lot in my area in North Holland, and they float above our agriculture fields. Okay, so thank you so much, Christy, for sending your question, because we get that from all over the world. And interesting thing is I'm going to have Hans-Jörg explain to everyone that's following and listening to this how complex it is and how much it is to do a study and the lab work that we have done. Hans-Jörg, could you explain this to everyone that they understand maybe why the governments are not looking at it, number one, and two, what is involved, financially to get such a analysis done on those strings? It's not a simple thing. Go ahead, Hans-Jörg.
Okay, one point is that we have that you have to have quite a lot of very high sophisticated state-of-the-art instruments. And you have to combine, let's say, results from one instrument, mostly for structure elucidation, with the other one, so that you can finally get out what are the chemicals filled in the as payload in the cavity. The second one is the cost side. If you do such analysis, even it took not 22 months, it takes maybe, if you can work every day on that, could be done in a half a year. So you have minimum, let's say, 3 or 4 chemists involved. You have lab personnel involved. You have the instrument involved. You have the consumables involved. And at the end of the day, you have to pay that. And for our analysis, I'm assuming a little bit, but it's something between 150,000 up to 250,000 Swiss francs. So the costs for such analysis, which covers, let's say, 10 techniques, minimum, high sophisticated techniques together, cost quite a lot of money.
I know that what you're saying, Hans-Jörg, is absolutely, because we've gone through all this. And after I personally filed the claim against the federal council member, his right-hand co-worker pretty much wrote me an email and said, you know what, you have to go back down, not at the federal level, but you have to get back down to the state level. And there is a list of labs at the state level, 5, 6 different labs he rumbled off. So, so I said, I'm not interested in more labs. We have the lab analysis done. We're here to try to get to you and discuss the findings in the results. So, but then a friend of mine, Roger Bittel, is a journalist with his TV station. He started calling those labs for us because it's a little bit easier when he answers, does the phoning than me. But me is like, that just hang up. So we have interesting enough people that started talking to us, and one of them specifically, I'm not going to call names now, but they quoted us $240 an hour just to start looking at this stuff. And we're a nonprofit organization. We're doing this volunteer work from all over the place. And obviously our nonprofit platform, we have up to 30 people that assist us with all sorts of tasks, and they're doing it all voluntarily. Well, without people like that, we couldn't be doing all this stuff. So it's crazy. So anyway, I have an additional question here. Catherine from Switzerland. She's asking, why does the Swiss Farmers Association not care about this? That's a great question. Why aren't the farmers, all these unions and all about agriculture and the farmers and stuff, why are they not going crazy about it? Who wants to approach this? Marvin, would you like to talk about that, Marvin?
Well, let me talk about it from a non-farmer standpoint first. Almost everyone, say in the scientific community, gets money from the government, and no one wants to bite the hand that feeds them. And I imagine that there's a similar thing with respect to the farming communities. That's way out of my line of knowledge. But this is true in science, for example. You would think that science, not chemtrails, just real down to earth, like what's inside the earth kind of science, that people would tell the truth. But they don't. In Europe and in the United States, in geoscience, in astrophysics, planetary science, they all stick with a storyline, and they won't dare to even mention work that brings about a challenge to that storyline, because everybody is deathly afraid of losing their money and their support. It's career fear, and this is permeated the whole community of supposedly intelligent people. So I imagine that there must be some similar mechanism with respect to the farming community. I don't know specifics.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marvin. Renette, would you like to expand on this? I'm sure you've dealt a little bit with farmers, right?
Well, we have, but I don't really think farmers are that aware of what's really going on. They
Yeah.
certainly they aren't. And one of the things that has been happening is that we are reaching out and showing them the rainwater lab results, or pointing out to the sky. Do you notice how you don't get the sunshine like you used to get? And crops are definitely failing. And there is a reason why we have these Monsanto's GMO aluminum, anti-aluminum seeds that are resistant to aluminum, is because crops can't grow now without these type of seeds. And so it's paramount. And I do hope with the confirmation of Bobby Kennedy Jr., he is taking all these topics on, and he's trying to literally make Americans healthy again. And I have no doubt that he knows that as long as we continue to be sprayed, nobody's going to be healthy. And if our soil is not healthy, if our water is not healthy, if our food or crops are not healthy, that doesn't matter what he does at that level. And so he knows, he's mentioned it many times, we've got to wrangle control of the skies.
I think that's a very good analysis of that. I'm personally putting a strategy together here in Switzerland to get with the farmers. There's farmers associations, on every canton. It's like equivalent to a state has those. And we have a team in the background that has been gathering all the emails of all the workers inside those bureaus and administrative bodies. So we can actually get everyone aware. And but it really, the grassroots movement has to come from the bottom up. And I see Philip, you want to say something? Please come out.
Yes, just quickly, because I know many farmers around here, because I also live on the countryside. And I do think we should not underestimate the farmers. Many of them do know what's going on, and I talk a lot to them. The problem is that the Farmers Association, at least in Switzerland, is like a representation of our political system. And that's why I want to warn you, Christian, not to go top down, but really bottom up, because all the representatives of the Farmers Association is like a little deep state.
I agree. It really is a from the bottom up concept. So, I mean, I have two brothers, they're farmers. So I get it, and don't underestimate the know-how. Most of these farmers are very much connected to the earth. They know what's going on. And I think they're being put under duress substantially. So I think what we're going to do here, I mean, there's a few more questions, but I'm going to go ahead to this next part with you guys, because this is just, for me, it's just a great experience having you guys all here. We have said in the very beginning, it's very complex. We're not going to solve all this in one night. But I think we made the first really good step here, which is to collaborate with our friends across the ocean. So next time we may have people from South America, who knows, from other continents, but right now, since there's such a huge wave coming from the new administration, and yes, we have a lot of people say, well, we can't trust these guys and this. I say, okay, we really can't trust anybody what they say, but we need to watch what they do. But I think the sore point here is that, I get this question often. It's like, why are they poisoning themselves? What's the psychological thing behind? What is wrong with these people? I mean, they're poisoning themselves. They're poisoning their own pets. They're poisoning their own children, their grandchildren. What's wrong with these crazy people? Anna, I would like for you to maybe share a few things about that, because we had a little bit of dialogue about this.
So there is this movement, it's called technocratic transhumanism, and technocracy is a philosophy that says that God's creation can be augmented and taken over and evolved by humanity. And the idea is to use nanotechnology, robotics, artificial intelligence, and synthetic biology to fuse and digitize every cell on Earth. There is actually a huge library now where, because of what's being sprayed, is also, for example, smart dust. Smart dust are biological sensors that give information bits so that every living thing can be archived and its data put into what's called a metaverse. And these transhumanists, they want to fuse with artificial intelligence. And for example, Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, clearly describes that nanorobots will replace humanity atom by atom. Celeste Sala was a whistleblower who went to a 2018 workshop on transhumanism by the US Army. And at that time, they discussed that by 2025, no natural humans will be alive. There's many military documents, including, for example, the Army document Cyber Soldier 2050, that discusses that human augmentation and cyborgification is the goal, is happening, that the healthcare system is actually what will make people used to this concept. And if you look at the strategy of the fourth industrial revolution by Klaus Schwab, you see in the center is vaccination, and that is the core of the Internet of Body, Internet of Things. And it's all about this aspect of the desire to create transhumans and actually enter the post-human era. The post-human era means where we're no longer going to be organic, but we're going to be fully robotic. The artificial intelligence will surpass all living humans in intelligence, and ultimately they will have full control of the earth, and evolution will be guided by humans. That is the most demented, monstrous, stupid, and evil idea anybody can have. And science without a moral compass and a conscience and a love of life and the consideration of, as Renette said, 7 generations forward, is always destructive and will lead to extinction. And we need to reform all of science, and the cowardness of science and the people who are in it to speak the truth and stand up for life and not for their paycheck.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much. You're going to lead us into the last part of this webinar.
I use one word that encapsulates it all, the word evil. That is what is happening, and it is it just says it all.
Marvin, I think you're right on it. I'm going to go ahead, like I started in the very beginning. Renette, I'm going to ask you to do your closing statements here to today's webinar. What would you like to address here, everyone that's followed us here live or done later on in a recording?
Well, for many years as an elected official, I had always been asking myself, how does one measure an elected official's leadership once they're elected? What is that metrics? And I've been looking for it for a long time, and I realized I didn't have to figure it out. I just had to look back upon history. And that was the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. They had the great law of peace. It inspired our forefathers. Benjamin Franklin hung out with the Iroquois. And if you take that law, great law of peace, and the Constitution side by side, they're verbatim, except for we're talking about perpetuity, but we never really talked about that 7th generation principle. And they replaced the grandmother council with the Supreme Court justices. Those are the biggest differences. And so what I want to say this is that it's very important that we finally challenge our elected officials and ourselves and our leaders, whether you're a police officer, a teacher, a scientist, a doctor, that we look through that lens of the 7th generation principle. And the smallest decisions we make day in, day out, day in, we have to think through this process of, does this serve 7 generations from now, or does this take away from now? And what is happening with our pilots, with our scientists, with these chemical companies, with Silicon Valley, with the billionaires, as Dr. Anna was saying, there is definitely a concerted effort to completely transform humanity and nature as we know it. This does not. This is the antithesis of the 7th generation principle. So I'm going to ask everyone out there to learn about the 7th generation principle, think about it, make decisions through that lens. And that is the basis for my work, is ultimately to clear the skies and to ensure that what we have today is still here 7 generations from now.
Thank you so much, Renette. Appreciate it very much. And I'm sure all the viewers as well. Dr. Anne, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap it up too with your, closing remarks to our viewers.
I'd like to remind people that amongst human beings, we have one commonality. We want to live, we love our children, we love our families. And in that principle of survival, we can come together. It doesn't matter if we have different viewpoints, but if we can agree on this thing, that we want to survive this war, then we can work together and make it happen. We need to set our differences aside because we're running out of time. So I would hope that people really start fighting for the divine human being that we are, for the natural human, and the fact that we need to do this now. We need to do this. The time of sitting on your rear end and doing nothing and waiting for other people to stand up and fight is over, because you will be mowed over by this train that's coming at us faster than we can even comprehend.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anna. Fantastic. So glad to have you with us. Marvin, would you like to make your closing statement here? You're muted.
Excuse me.
Now we can hear you.
The good thing is that people are still want to do good and want to put an end to this. I mean, there's one young lady named Nikki Florio that goes to all the farmers she can to tell them what's going on in the world. And there are other people, and you see some of them on this panel as well. This is the good. Now, one thing that has not happened in our government in ages, people have not been held responsible for what they do. I think that's going to change with the present administration, because people think they can do anything and get away with it. Ultimately, I rather suspect that when the whole story of what's going on, there should be a tribunal that pertains to crimes against humanity and the environment. And those people who order the aerial spraying, for example, and those people who deceive the public, and there are some very active disinformation agents, those should stand trial for what they do, and there should be a retribution. People need to feel that if they don't do right, they have to suffer the consequences. Yeah. And at least in the US and probably many of the European countries, they can do all sorts of horrible things and get away with it. But I'm hoping that is now, with the new administration, will come to an end. And the people who are currently contaminating the world, because what we're doing is we're destroying life on Earth. We're killing insects, we're killing birds, we're killing bats, we're killing just about all life. We're poisoning the soil, we're killing plants, killing trees. We are really into the sixth extinction, great extinction, and it's an anthropogenic extinction. And if we don't stop what's going on, well, we may not be alive on Earth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marvin. Hans-Jörg, I would like for you to make your closing remarks to our viewers.
Yeah. As an engineer, I'm not so absolutely convinced that everybody worldwide understood what is happening. When I listen to what Anna said and Renette, I fully agree with that, even with Marvin, that's no problem. But I see with any analysis or analytical investigation that the people who are standing behind have so much things developed. We don't even know it, what comes up to us, and we don't know what we have to do to fight against them. So for me, the first step would be to get a better end that it's coming up, that we analyze or look what is coming up to understand it and inform people as quick as possible, hoping that so many people stand up and fight against that we get a chance to change the things. But we need information, we need knowledge, we need the power for the people. Otherwise, it wouldn't function.
I think you're absolutely correct, Hans-Jörg. So we depend on more whistleblowers. We need to have more people within the government body that are now obviously under duress doing their daily job to have, you know, their salary, their monthly payments come to them so they can actually pay for their family and bills and stuff. We understand that stress and duress. And then there's others, they're the true total narcissists who are all about themselves, about their careers, and they're very hard to come by and go to get by. So there's a tremendous amount of arrogance in our administrative body. You know, it's just amazing what these politicians are getting away with, and these people that work for the government. And I think like what Marmon said is exactly that. We need to have them pay for what you've done. You know, we need to have these, you know, the judicial, the legislative, and executive branches. They're all melted together, and on top of that, you know, the fourth power, the media. They're all colluded. They're all corrupted. So we need to totally get this thing all cleaned up. And I sure hope that with this new administration, we get some additional waves that we can ride all the way from the United States into Switzerland, into Germany, and, you know, anywhere else in the world. Now, with this, I'd like to give Philip also the opportunity to give us his closing remarks.
I would like to encourage people to do something, because I see many activities, at least here in Switzerland, for initiatives for Switzerland to leave the WHO, specifically after the new administration in the USA also has announced to do that, or maybe they have already done it, I'm not even sure. And probably this activity also happens in different countries, I don't know. But I think we should also organize initiatives and movements to quit the prohibition of Environmental Modification Act, because you discussed it before. I didn't add something to it, but I have to say everybody should read it. It's a Trojan horse, because there is not just this Article 3 that was mentioned during the discussion before, but there's even an addendum to this Article 3 stating explicitly that it can be in contradiction to international law. And this really makes it a Trojan horse.
Thank you, Philip. It is a Trojan horse, absolutely is. Well, we're at the end here. I would like to just state a few things. Our website is Verein Wir. We will have all these show notes posted, and we will have collectively our contact information made available to. We run a Telegram channel. It's all in German. Some things we do, or more now with our collaboration and with North America and other parts of the world. We'll probably have more English parts to it. English is the language of the world. I say it in my presentations in Switzerland. If you do not understand English, okay, you just don't understand what's happening in this world. Everything is happening in the English language. You know, contracts are there. You know, all the health and studies. There's always, you know, 95+% or all the studies worldwide are done in the English language. And when we translate, you know, sometimes things get a little bit lost. So from that point of view, anyone, okay, that feels like they're at home, they can't do anything, and they don't have the wherewithal. No, every single person that is listening to this has an opportunity to support us. And even if they don't have some skills or whatever it is, they may have an opportunity to supporting us with a membership from anywhere in the world. We have people from all over the place that support us with a membership. It's 40 francs for an individual, 50 for a family, and 150 francs for an annual membership for a small business. So with those type of memberships and donations, we can fund more opportunities, more projects that allow us to connect and collaborate worldwide. I am going to make it really short here, and I'm going to stop with a quote from James Clear. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. I'd like to thank everybody that participated tonight. Thanks so much to everyone at home that's followed us. Please help us share this information anywhere to anyone you can. Send it to your local, regional, or national politicians. Let's make a wave all over the world. With that, thanks to everyone. God bless. Good night with everybody. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.